Alright, I wanted to remake another video in which I show you all how to fold sails without getting into fights. So we have two rules on board that are the most prominent rules, and they are: rule number one is don't fall overboard, and rule number two is no fighting while folding sails. And that rule number two is only really valid if you've sort of learned how to fold sails. So this is to help do that. One of the things that I see a lot when people are folding sails, usually you try to stack either the tack end. The reason why you would want to do that is because then when you unfold the sail, it goes up into the track really easily, and the entire sail is still is aligned in one direction, right underneath the foil, and so it'll go up really easily. The other thing that you sometimes do, and I've made a model of that here, is if you have battens in the sail, which are these, you may want to stack the battens in the fold all to this end, and that's so that you can brick the sail. It's called bricking the sail. It's essentially folding it into thirds once it's already been sort of like flip-flopped back on itself, and it helps save space when storing the sail without having to take the battens out. So I'm going to try to show a version of each of those, and I've drawn lines here and done sort of like almost origami style instructions, so that you all can see the geometry, because at the end of the day it's actually the geometry of how we fold the sail as opposed to pulling or anything like that to make it correct. So as you can see with this one, it looks like down here we've got a really small fold, and on this side we've got a really big fold. And then from there out, once you've established that block, the folds are pretty even as they go all the way up. So this is the biggest point of contention usually with two people folding a sail. There'll be a person at each end, and this one will fold down here, and this one will fold up here, and this one at this end will want a little bit more, and they'll pull. And then the person at this end goes, no, don't do that. And then they pull this way. And then that gets it off kilter for this one, and they start pulling back and forth, and then a fight breaks out pretty quickly. So here's the way to think about it. It's not pulling and fighting for sailcloth at your end or the other. It's actually geometry. So when you want the sail to stack towards your end, you take a bigger fold. When you want the sail to stack at the opposite end that you're at, you're going to be taking a little bit of a smaller fold. And what that does is the geometry of it pushes and pulls the folds forward and back in the sail. So here's the first fold to go in. This sort of establishes the block. And then we've got a second fold that goes in. And if you can tell, this end is now lined up. And now if you look, I'll just use this line as a reference. So it was the opposite actually of what I said. Yeah, it was correct what I said before. So if you take a smaller fold on this end, it's going to start stacking this way. If I take a smaller fold at this end, it'll start stacking out this way. As you can see, it's pointing over the edge now. So once you get it squared up on the edge that you want it to be on, which is this edge, the left edge, you just keep taking pretty even folds, and you just do small adjustments with one another. So again, this one will take a little smaller fold, this one will take a little bit bigger fold sometimes if it starts getting over towards one end a little too far. But it's not about two people fighting, pulling one way or another, fighting back and forth. It's geometry. So if you're both on the same page with the fact that it's geometry, and one person needs to take a bigger fold or a smaller fold, that's the best way to approach it. The other thing that's important is to establish your folds. So you see here I have really distinct folds because this is just, you know, trace paper. It's really easy to fold and just establish a fold. But let's say you take a fold, you know, somewhere like midsection here, and I just do my fold, right? What's helpful is put a foot or a knee or a hand on the ground on each end. And so if a person on one end does it first, let's say this end establishes where they're going to want the fold, the other person is going to tug. And do you see how a fold formed? That's what you do with a sail. So one person establishes where the fold's going to be, puts your foot down or your knee or your hand and hold it real tight, have the other person yank, and you'll see where the fold is. And then that's where you fold. So with these, I've got folds already established because it's easier to demonstrate with folds already established. And then I've got a line to show the geometry of each fold. And then when you get to the top here, usually what people do is you can see the overhang, and this is usually a really thick piece of cloth called the headboard, or it's just reinforcement at the head of the sail. And what you do usually is you fold this something like that, so that the headboard isn't folded over. And then usually you roll from the clew, and the reason you roll from the clew, and this is without battens, the reason you roll from the clew is because when you hook the sail up next, here's your tack. This is what you're going to usually attach first. So you'll pull the sail up to the bow with you, and you'll unroll a couple of rolls, and now you've got your head and your tack right here, and you can hook that up to the tack point and the head up to the halyard and put it into the track. And then as you come back, you unfold the rest, put your sheets on the clew, and you're ready to hoist. So that's without battens. Okay, with battens, when you put your sail away, your goal is to get all these battens to generally fall into this first section here. And I'll show you why in a second, but basically you can see these two folds here. This is where we're gonna brick the sail. So the sail will go from a length of this long as folded to folded into thirds with a section of only like this long. So the first fold is here, and then the next fold goes here, and you can see these battens sort of lining up. They don't have to be perfectly straight, but they do all need to fall into this section around the leech of the sail. So another fold here. Again, this is the same concept as before. We're using the geometry of the sail to line up these battens at this end. And again with this, we move the head. We do this, we put the head in this direction, in this case, for a slightly different reason, which is when you pull the sail out, and let's say it's resting like this on the deck, now you've got the tack available to you. You can connect that. And if it's in a bag or something, now you can find the head relatively easy. It's only about halfway back, and you pull the head forward and you stack it all. So what you do is you put the head in place, and now you're able to brick the sail. So the battens don't get broken, they're all in there, and your bricks are about the distance of a batten, which is why you want to stack the battens all at one end. And then you can store the sail bricked in this way, and it'll take up less space. So that's a quick tutorial on a couple different ways to fold sails, and hopefully it's helpful and prevents some fights. All right, good luck.